Hello! Seems like only yesterday, or maybe a couple of months, I was talking about PWM based Express LRS receivers with 4, 6 and 8 PWM ports, and it's just getting more and more now. Today I'm looking at this receiver from BetaFPV. It has 14 PWM channels and works on Express LRS and is also a diversity receiver. If we take it out the bag, this is what we get, and I've plugged all the various cables in that came with it. You've got 10 main PWMs and then the other ones are accessed in various ways. We'll go and have a proper close-up look at that in a minute, but I wanted to put it in one of my older planes. Oh, continuity error, the t-shirt's changed. Well, I'd filmed that bit holding up my plane, not realising that all my personal details were here just in case the planes go down. So rather than dox myself, I'm going to redo this. So what I was saying is, here is my plane I want to use, and I've been waiting to upgrade it for a while. This is a mini Talon, this is the body for it, the wings are safely put away, and what we've got in here is an old legacy flight controller. This is the Eagle Tree Vector, you can see it there. Eagle Tree aren't with us anymore, sadly went out of business, had a lot of really great products, and for the time the Vector was a very good flight controller. And I really didn't want to get rid of it. The OSD stuff, which is like in colour and really fast updating, is still, I think, really good. At least that's how I remember it, but it'd be good to fly it again to see. So that can't run CRSF because it's a new protocol. Currently it's on SBUS using, this here is a FreeSky L9R. Now one of the things the new 14 channel thing runs on, it can run CRSF, it can run SBUS, it can run PWM. Can it run a mix? Because what happens is the Vector, albeit a very good flight controller, didn't have a pass-through. People kept asking for it because you might want a different channel to do something else. I've got this pan system on a servo and I want a channel to pan and it wouldn't do it. So what I had is I was running one port on the L9R as SBUS, but I think SBUS worked on, like, you could have it work on channels 1 to 8 and then you could do like 9 to 16 as the PWM thing. So I've got a PWM going all the way to control the pan directly. Can you mix SBUS and PWM currently? I think so, but it'd be interesting to check it. I mean, I could run it all on PWM, but that's a lot of unnecessary wiring. So I'd like to try and mix it together if I could. But that's the intention. Anyway, back to me from previously. If I can't replicate it, I've got plenty of channels to do it, but I thought it'd be an interesting thing to test. Of course, if I do use like SBUS and something else, you don't need 14 channels, but I do know there's a lot of guys there with really complicated gliders that might have multiple different servos controlling flaps and multiple ailerons and different ways of using it all together that have been crying out for more and more channels, and this is possibly something that can help. So let's go into close-up and take a closer look of what we've got here, and then I'll look at how to configure it. Okay, so here's a close-up of the receiver, and I've plugged everything in that came with it because I want to show what came with it, and I pretty much think these are where things go. We've got this Y cable here, and this is, normally you'd find this in a plane which has got 2 different servos for ailerons, so one single thing controls ailerons in 2 different ways. Anyway, as I said earlier, if we look here, we see we've got channel 1 to channel 10 going along your regular pins here. But up here as well, we've got channel 13, channel 14 and a VBAT. So I think this is for the sort of VBAT. And I presume what happens is when you put the VBAT in, I don't know if it powers it through that or it's for giving telemetry back. I have to say it was a little unclear in the manual, but I'll have a look. Over here you've got a specific thing for running an RGB light, and there's lots of lighting codes for certain things, and this one can take an SDL and SDA as another sensor you could plug in, for example. It's a little bit curious though, because we get like, you know, 10 there, and then I suppose that's 11, that's 12, bit harder to use, 13 and 14, and it kind of depends what happens depending on the protocol we used. As I said, the manual is not too bad. It's a little bit what happens if I do this, what happens if I do that. That's not quite mentioned. As I said, here's the LED setup, but we don't have an LED there. The other thing it's got is this USB-C interface, but it should also have a Wi-Fi chip in there. So I really think the best thing to do is to try and set it up and see what channel mapping options we have, because that's the stuff it definitely said. For example, it said if you're running SBUS, then SBUS works on channel 14, I think. So let's see, when configuring CRSF, channel 13 becomes RX, channel 14 TX, SBUS, channel 13 has no output, channel 14 becomes SBUS. So it's like, well, what happens to the physical PWM channels 1 to 10? That's not quite spelled out as I'd want it to. Hence the reason I think I need to do a quick experiment with, you know, plugging some stuff in and seeing exactly what we get. So let me plug it in and let's see if we can get it on the Wi-Fi and see what it's set up to now and see what we can mess around with. Then before I do any installation of the plane, we'll plug some servos in. And I think I've got some SBUS test stuff somewhere just to plug all that in and see what happens. So I plugged in the receiver via USB and waited 60 seconds. It started going into Wi-Fi mode. So I was able to join to that, and thinking what I wanted to do was change my bind phrase, but I did notice it had a sort of dodgy looking firmware on there. Obviously something that they developed themselves in the meantime before it was officially available. And when I then went to the model where you could change the outputs, I did notice we only had 12 channels, and I thought, oh, that's dodgy. I did ask BetaFPV about the right firmware to flash with to get this updated, but they didn't come back to me very quickly. So after checking with the ELRS Discord group, they were able to confirm that I needed the BetaFPV SuperP 14 channel. So I thought I'd go ahead and flash that to see if I got my 14 channels up. So let's get this flashed now, and then when I reattach with Wi-Fi I see the proper 3.3 firmware and we've got 14 channels to play with. Right, let's get on and try and configure this. Okay, so when we look at this, it actually makes a little bit more sense, because if we look at the output options for the regular channels, we get that lot. But if I actually go down to 14, I can actually select serial TX, and if I do that, then 14 becomes serial TX, 13 becomes serial RX. So if you were using regular CRSF, that would work. We want to use SBUS, and we've got the serial protocol here. So if I change that to SBUS, which I think is not going to be inverted, and do that, and then save, it says configuration updated. Okay, so now I'm going to try connecting to this and see if I get an SBUS signal through it. And then what I want to do is make sure I've got individual options to move my PWM channels separately. So if I have an SBUS flight controller that reads, say, channels 1 to 8, can I use channel 9 just as a regular PWM channel to move a servo around? Let's find out. I've got the receiver here. I've got channel 14 linked to here, so it will display an SBUS signal, and then I've channel 10, I've got this servo here, and what I've done is I've set up a mix of channel 10 on S1, and if I move things around, you can see we're getting an SBUS signal through here, which is good. But also that if I move this, you can see our servo move from that. So this looks like it's going to fit in great. So I think what I'm going to do now is get this installed in, try and remember how to configure that plane and see what happens. After an interesting start, the old LR9 had these PCB antennas which don't fit down there, so I think I glued the plane around it. So I just had to try and decase this whilst in here, and I'm just going to try and take the UFL connectors off the board to get the other one in. Here's the rest of it here. Okay, so that didn't quite go as expected, and that's because there were no UFL connectors. I think this was a very early L9R, and so it had these two terminals and the glue on there was not removable, so these basically got ripped off. You can see there's kind of a ground and a live element, one to solder onto each of those, but if I want to use this again I can do it. Meantime, I've gone ahead and popped the receiver, decided to put it on the outside, easy to get to as I just found out, and it's quite handy because then the antennas can go in a V on the V-tail here. We've got connected channel 10 for the pan, this is SBUS, and what I found I had in here is I've got a separate back. I can't remember if the Vector doesn't like produce the 5 volt output,
but I've got a back down here, which is pretty useful if you're going to run a plane with lots of servos, as they're quite heavy on the ampage, they can be. Anyway, that's going into channel 1 there, just to power that receiver. I had a look at the radio setup, and it's all a bit weird. I had a quick look at this. It comes up, it beeps at the moment as if to say I don't like the signal to the throttle. I don't know, we'll have to do a little bit of checking that out, see what's going on, and I need to work out how to do the fail-safe on this one as well. So little few bits to do. Probably I'm going to fly at this configuration, but I don't particularly like this VTX. I will probably change it over in due course, but for now it's just to check, make sure this receiver does its job and I can get back in the air. Okay, we seem to have got it sorted. We have got all the basic controls moving, ailerons, elevator, we've got our that thing and the prop spins. We've got this guy. This is here because I've managed to pick up a GPS signal in a house, which means that GPS receiver is way better than my normal stuff. It's got an RSSI signal somehow. I'm not sure how, because I only detected 14 channels and RSI and LQ are on channel 15 and 16. And when I went into the, you can do things to get into the menu. If I do flicky twice, you will see, let me just put this on, that we've got all sorts of menu items we can go to using the stick, which is pretty cool. And one of those was about making it learn the RC channels, and when I did that we got no output from the servos controlling the elevator, so I had to go back and try and find software for this to try and reset it, which EagleTree has gone, is disappeared off the internet now, so that was a pain. But I managed to find it on an RC Groups thread, so that seems okay. If I literally turn the radio off, it will go into failsafe. I like that. Too many RX glitches is its thing. Fortunately, because it hasn't gone anywhere, it's not spinning the prop, which I much prefer than doing a position thing. So that's all okay. Yeah, so I think it's safe to fly, essentially. We we'll give it a run, see what happens. It just makes sure it reconnects here. There it is. Okay. Welcome to the field. Here we are. We've got the mini Talon. It's got the receiver on. It's all set up to go. Have to admit, I'm pretty nervous. I don't think I've flown this in about 6-7 years, and it's quite a big beast to launch. I've got to go with a left-handed launch. There is a fairly stiff wind coming in this way, which should make it easier. But yeah, it's just such a big plane and pretty heavy. But as long as you get that initial oomph and it gets in the air, fingers crossed, it should be good. I've got my HD0 goggles, so I'll try recording commentary as I go. The one thing I did manage to forget is my head tracker cable. So it looks like manual head tracking. Well, so it looks like manual panning if we get that far, hopefully. Yeah, I wouldn't be so worried if it wasn't such a big plane, because if it goes down it's going to like smash up and stuff. And I hadn't completely had to reset up the flight controller, which is an old one, and a new radio, new receiver. Yeah, it's not all the possibilities for success are here, but fingers crossed. Let's try it and see what happens.
Whilst I thought it was a good idea to launch it line of sight, and I think that was the right thing to do, the difficulty of taking off my glasses, sticking those in my mouth, trying to put the goggles on and then getting back to where I was not easy. And during the time of the glasses in the mouth to goggle transition, I almost went into a tree before I rescued it. So one of the first things I did to make sure I could go and sit down was to put it into RTH test. Basically, I sort of stood there and watched it for a while, just making sure it was okay. And when I decided, it was flying in circles above me okay, I could go sit down, get myself comfy, fly it around a bit and see what things were working okay and what might need to be sorted out, that sort of thing. Okay, we is flying. And I'm just trying to orientate myself where everything is. We've got... Where's my... Oh, monster. Does dip slightly. My battery voltage is slightly covered by the goggle voltage. I had pre-read part of the manual and I found out that if I flick the mode settings 5 times it takes to new level. What I didn't appreciate is that it wouldn't do anything to the if I wasn't in a mode, and you can see it says on the left hand side that off means I'm not in a mode. As soon as I put this in 2D mode or 2D mode with hold, it would hold that. I also end up doing some trimming to try and bring it up because I was really quite a lot of elevator holding back, but essentially I decided that what I had is the battery a little too far forward. I had made a little mark in the plane previously, but I think going back and watching my review of it, I decided that was a little bit too conservative and it should be moved back. So I had the little HD camera on there, just 1080p, and I thought I'd just show you some footage here with the OSD in the corner. You can see quite a difference in the old CCD sensor compared to what the HD is seeing. But as I was flying out sort of towards the kilometre mark here, what I wanted to do is check the signal, and the only way I could do this, despite it having an RSSI indication on there which is made up, is take my glasses off and look at the telemetry. And although the LQ was on 100, it just flicked for a second to 97, and I thought that was weird. And you might think, well, you know, that's pretty good signal, but for this sort of field and that sort of range I would expect 100. And this reminded me that I was playing with the Gemini module, and as part of that what I had done is set up this radio internally via the Lua script at 500 Hz at 25 milliwatts in ELRS, which is both much too fast for the plane and a little underpowered. I'd normally fly at 100-150 Hz at 100 milliwatts. So I thought, oh no, I've done this wrong, I'm gonna have to come around and land. But I was just on the way back, just having a look at the gorgeous views there. It is interesting. I still do like the CCD sensor. I think it's really good, but yeah, the colour definition on it is very oversaturated. Everything's looking a bit orange, isn't it? Anyway, I decided what I need to do is come down for a landing and make some changes here so I could test this properly. Still going a bit quick, I think. A bit diagonal. Let's go around one more time. A bit of sideways thing going on here. I need to come inside of diagonally anyway, so that kind of works. Okay, trying to bleed off speed. Oh, this is going to be a long walk. Long walk, but down safely. That looked alright. So having brought it down, I gave it another throw, having changed the ELRS setting to 100 milliwatts at 100 Hz, and then I flew off to get to at least 1 kilometre. I think we got about 1.2 here, and I checked the LQ and I did the full turn and I had 100 all the way through, so that was absolutely fine. And you're probably thinking, hey, what happened to the panning? And in the first flight I checked it and I noticed it was reversed. When I landed and after I changed the mode, suddenly I couldn't work the servo anymore. And as I was flying up here, I suddenly thought, oh, I bet I haven't put it in the right channel mode. And yeah, lo and behold, when I got it down again, I'd managed to put it in 8 channel mode, so it just needs to be in like 16 or at least 10 channels to get this. But I thought while I was up here I'd have a fly around to see how this VTX would work, because I don't particularly like this VTX, I have to say. And I think I'm quite justified in saying that, because I'm just flying along here and admittedly I'm slightly behind myself on the right, but I've got enough height to have a decent signal. And first this went black and white, secondly it cut out straight away, and so I tried to get myself over a bit more. I also noticed that the HD0 goggles do cut out if you've got recording on auto, and they sort of think the signal's so bad, I'm just going to stop recording because you haven't got a signal, and then they come back in again. So I might try manual recording. I have to say, as far as the HD0 goggles went, one of the top things they have is that fan. I was speaking to a guy that came up to talk to me with the goggles on my head for like a full 10 minutes. Anything else, the sort of sweat or even heat would have completely steamed them up. These are absolutely clear, not a problem at all, which I'm very impressed with. So yet again, I decided to come and land and sort out the problem I had with having the wrong amount of channels selected on my Express LRS mode. Coming down, we are gliding. Still gliding. Line up for landing. Oh, not much of a flare on that one. Well, I've just landed it. Fairly good landing, not too bad. And yeah, I was absolutely right. I set it up as 8 channel basically when I switched the mode. And if we look now, we're back and all happy. However, I can't believe I did this at the time. See that camera? I fixed it with hot glue for some reason. I don't know why I didn't put some holes in and screw it in. And old hot glue gets a bit brittle, and guess what's happened? So I'm going to have to go home and repair it. But good news, little mini talon, not so little, flies fine. Receiver, absolutely great. So yeah, just patch this up a little bit. And then we'll sort the rest out. And then I want to come back for another fly because I've got more stuff to do with it. Obviously I want to try the head tracking. We've got Gemini node to try out on that receiver as well. But for today, unfortunately, we're done. Well, here's my little talon after that. I've gone ahead and I fixed the camera on properly with screws this time. I don't know why I didn't glue it on 6-7 years ago when I built it. I'm presuming this is one of like my first prints and I wasn't confident enough about putting the holes in, or this was just a temporary idea. And that was going to be the case of it. Anyway, it's screwed in now with 3 screws. That's not going anywhere, so that's a fix there. It turned out that that landing, although it seemed quite soft, obviously we hit some long grass and it stopped very quickly. Did a few more bits, and again, my design choice here, I don't know why I did it. I put the pitot tube right at the front of the nose, and that has got just moved about a bit, so I just need to glue that in. And the wheel's disappeared. This is actually where I made a boo-boo before. I did a launch with the goggles on and I smacked it down, and this entire thing with the mount and the wheel had come off, and that was glued back, so it wasn't particularly strong in the first place. I might go back and see if I can find the wheel next time I'm out there. Otherwise I'll just take that out and flatten that. It's no big deal, the fact that that flats front, really. I also found when I got back the motor was rattling around, really moving a lot, and first I thought it was the motor mount, but it wasn't. And for a moment I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to crack the whole plane in half. This plane was built one side and then the entire thing was glued together, and that's why I had such problems getting the last receiver out. That's why I now can't move the pitot tube without opening it up, and I thought I was going to be screwed there. But after unscrewing the motor mount and taking that out, it was basically where the motor mount fitted to the motor. These come in the box. It's like a bit of an X shape, and that screws in to the back of the motor, and then you mount that mount on the thing. That had come loose, so these were sort of rattling around. That's fixed now. I'll keep an eye on that one. So lots to do, but the receiver worked well, which is after all what we're reviewing. I just use these as good excuses to go and find an old plane and take it out and fly things. What the main thing I wanted to do with this is check I could take an old legacy flight controller on an old plane and fly it, and I mixed SBUS and normal PWM together. Works fine, and obviously the signal was great, and this is a true diversity and receiver, so having your antennas out of V really does help. And as I said, in that second flight, after I'd made sure I had the right speed and power, we got 100% all the way through that turn when I looked down at it. There's a few things I didn't use in this, and you can do a lot with this. You can use all PWM, you can mix things about, you can run it on CRSF, and I didn't use the telemetry for getting the power because obviously I had that on my screen, although that was slightly covered by the goggle stuff. So I've got more to do next time I fly this. Obviously we want to sort out flying with the pan and having head tracking on. Didn't like that VTX. Did you see it cut out that time? So I'll be swapping this over. Maybe something like, I've got this Rush Solo sat on my desk here, which would be a nice swap out. Some little bits to fix, glue that pitot tube back in, and we should be good to go. The other thing I thought I might do is look to see if I can push the LQ back to the receiver. As I said, LQ and RSSI on ELRS come in sort of channels 15, 16, and the vector wasn't recognising those. But back in the day on old FreeSky receivers where they didn't have RSSI but they had telemetry, we would get the telemetry as RSSI signal on the radio, and then we'd push that back to an RC channel and then use it as RSSI. It's basically going all the way around. It's a kind of weird thing. So I thought I'd do the same thing, or try it at least. So I've got LQ as telemetry on the radio. I should be able to use it as a source, push it down an RC channel, and hopefully, and it kind of depends on if the vector stuff can either recognize it or I can select which LQ is coming from. But I'll try that in another video. But that'll be coming up, not necessarily next, because I've always got like a backlog of stuff to do, and I kind of do the backlog and then come back to the stuff I want to do. But hey, I really enjoyed flying the little mini Talon again. I didn't get much flight time because I broke it, but it was good to fly. It was really solid plane. I didn't have to worry about the battery. Oh yeah, the other thing I need to do is sort out my my OSD on the goggles so I don't wipe my own battery voltage out with some other stuff. But hey, this worked well. Useful if you've got a plane like me on an old legacy flight controller, or you've got something, perhaps you don't even fly FPV but you've got loads of servos. You can plug it in here and have a decent Express LRS connection and have some telemetry sent down about the power and stuff if you want to. Anyway, that's the review of the SuperP 14 channel Express LRS receiver from BetaFPV. Many thanks to them for supplying it. I hope that's been helpful, and I will catch you next one. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.